Welcome, everybody. Thursday, April 20th. John,
Microphone. Thursday, April 20th. John Aravosis here. Welcome, folks. Aravosis Report. Let me get TikTok rolling here. And then, as always, we're going to wait about 3 minutes for folks to join us first, and then we will get rolling. There we go. TikTok is coming. How's everybody doing? It's Thursday. It's lovely. It's hotter than hell outside. I mean, it looks like it's, the surface of the sun out there. It feels like it's 85 degrees, which actually I think it got hotter earlier. Anyway, still nice, but kind of weird summer weather all of a sudden for DC. Anyway, hello all. The way the show works, as you guys know, we go a couple minutes at the beginning. We wait 2 or 3 minutes for folks to arrive, so bear with us for that. Just a quick reminder: we've got one of our coffee talk this Saturday I'm doing 10:30 a.m. Eastern to make it a little bit easier for me and maybe you. That's for the paid subscribers on TikTok and the paid subscribers on Discord via Patreon to join us. So you guys, the Patreon folks, can join us on Discord. At the very top, you'll see $5 a week, blah, 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 coffee talk. You guys, it's just right here on Saturday, 10:30 a.m. Oh, boy. Anyway, yes, thank you, Crazy. I do it for you. Crazy Carl. I called you Crazy. That sounds funny, too. My Georgetown mug with a little bit of tea. I got this mug back in 1987, I think. It was 86 or 87-ish when I was going to graduate school at Georgetown. Kind of amazing. Now, of course, I'm going to drop it and shatter it probably. All right, guys, another couple minutes or another minute or so. TikTok's going slow today. I wonder what's going on. Something weird's going on with TikTok. I don't know if it's throttling me today or what, but it's going a little slow. Well, we're going to start soon anyway. Just wait a second here. Oh, hello, Dinova in the Netherlands. Spring offensive started. Has it? I mean, has it? I don't know. Anyway. All right, guys, I'm going to start anyway. Welcome. This is John Aravosis with the Aravosis Report. This is my daily show I do nightly at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S. We talk about the latest news from Ukraine. The way the show always works is, thank you, Laka. Thank you, Laka. I appreciate that. Actually, I really appreciate that. That was very generous. Thank you. The way the show works is the first half of the show, I go through the news, and the second half of the show, I take your guys' questions. On TikTok, well, actually, on YouTube, you can always buy a super chat question, and I'll get to that immediately. Basically, it's a way of supporting my work. But as a thank you, I will get to your question immediately or as the next question I get to. And for the rest of you on TikTok as well, I very much appreciate the TikTok gifts because I do this for free. I've been doing it full time, and the way I'm able to afford doing it is with your gifts. So thank you very much. Please keep the gifts coming on TikTok, and let me get rolling. So today is day 420. I almost had the wrong date. 420 of Vladimir Putin's 10-day special military operation. Woo woo, Tom Clark, confetti. Thank you for that. So this was kind of a late breaking story that's actually, I hate to say funny, but it's kind of funny. Maybe ironic. Yes, I did notice that. Kind of weird. It's the 420th day of the war, and today is April 20th, which is kind of wild. Yeah, I noticed as I was saying it, I was like, I double checked. I was like, is that true? It is true. Yeah, that's kind of wild. Thank you, High Bank or Big High Bank for that. You're gonna love this. So right before I come on, there's breaking-ish news that an explosion has happened in the Russian town of Belgorod. Belgorod is right across the border here. It's like 20 miles across the border, 30 kilometers. It's nothing. It's right across the border. Here's Kharkiv. Here's Belgorod, Russia. Big supply center for the Russian troops. A lot of the supplies, whether it's fuel, whether it's weapons, munitions, things like that, come from Belgorod. And basically, I forget the exact supply route. Well, now the supply route isn't here because the Ukrainians control it. Probably more like this, okay? So it's supplying the Russians' efforts. Well, big explosion, huge crater in Belgorod this afternoon, 20-meter crater. 20 meters means 60 feet. So a 60-foot crater in downtown Belgorod. Social media pictures show a large hole in the road, rubble strewn nearby. Well, the Russian Defense Ministry admits it was them. The Russians bombed their own city today. It was an Su-34 Russian bomber. No further information, but the fact that the Russian Defense Ministry is apparently admitting it is pretty bad. I mean, it's got to be really bad. It's got to be really bad if the Russian Defense Ministry is admitting it. So I mean, funny in a ironic kind of way, but the Russians bombed their own city today. Oops. I mean, it really is a metaphor, though, for how the war is going. So let's keep on going with that. So you guys have heard about the Russian opposition leader who got 25 years in prison for simply criticizing the war, Vladimir Kara-Murza. And I mean, just that he's an opposition. Oh, thank you for the headset there, or the headphones, inspired woman. He gets 25 years simply for publicly opposing the war. Well, his lawyer has now fled the country. Listen to this. His lawyer says he had to flee before his client's verdict. So the verdict, before the verdict of 25 years, Vadim Prokhorov said he decided to go after receiving a warning there was, quote, interest in him by the federal authorities. He has defended prominent Russian dissidents and activists in the past. Now, really takes a special, I mean, God, it's so important to understand just how bad things are over there in Russia. And it's also important to understand that it's always been like this. This is what we had to deal with the Soviet Union. It's what we've had to deal with Putin. It is a dictatorship. It is a politically corrupt country that responds to one man, and that one man is always a dictator. It was during the Soviet times. It was during the Tsarist times. It is now. Not only do they jail a man 25 years for simply speaking out publicly against a war. Say what you will about any of our governments. Nobody goes to jail for 25 years simply because they spoke out against the war. But now the government is basically telling his lawyer, you'd better get out of the country. Again, that's the kind of stuff that happens in, banana republics. I'm trying to find another word to use. I don't even want to say developing. Saying developing countries is an insult to developing countries. That's the kind of thing that happens in banana republics. That's how bad it is. In good news, Jens Stoltenberg, who's the what's his actual Secretary General of NATO? He's sort of our top NATO functionary, basically. He was in Kyiv today, gave some really nice speeches. He's kind of interesting because he's always been very pro-Ukraine and pro-Ukraine joining NATO. I would say even more so than the rest of NATO. He's actually been kind of ahead of the curve on all of that. Thank you for the pause there. Who is that? Captain somebody? Captain Santa Arc. Okay, thank you for that. Listen to this, what he said today. Let me be clear. Ukraine's rightful place is in NATO, and over time, our support will help you make this possible. Now, I think he's pushing it a little. What I mean is, NATO isn't on board with that. His message is clearly ahead of the curve, okay? The Eastern countries in NATO, Poland and those others, are probably fine with this. The U.S. is not on board yet, obviously. The other sort of big powers are not. The Brits, I'd be kind of curious to see where the Brits are, where the British government is on that. I'm pretty sure the British government has kind of said, let's deal with that when it comes, right? But very interesting that he said that. A Sky News military analyst, retired Air Vice Marshal Sean Bell, said it was a hugely significant day for Ukraine. Ukraine is not in NATO, but this visit by the Secretary General speaks volumes. Let's see. It's symbolic. But it still is good that the Secretary General of NATO is saying this. But again, it's symbolic. It doesn't really force NATO to really do anything to support Ukraine. But again, it's a step forward. Let me tell you really quick about my Discord. We've got a Discord community set up over at discord.aravosis.com. You guys can find the link in my profile on TikTok. Just go to the Linktree link there in my profile, click it. All my stuff comes up. You guys via aravosis.com at the bottom of the screen. And our Discord community is just a lot of us hanging out, not shutting up, talking about the issues of the day. Usually pretty active group talking about Ukraine throughout the day, but also other issues. Fun stuff too, our pets, recipes, sports, you name it. But it's also nice because we've got a lot of auctions going on, which are kind of fun. And the auctions I use to support my work and also to support Ukraine. Half the money goes to Ukraine, half the money goes to support my work for all the Ukrainian stuff we auction off. And we've got really cool stuff. I will show you one or two things. Actually, I'm going to put this up later tonight. I told you I'm trying to procure a few more of these. This is a piece of the Russian fighter jet that got shot down over Ukraine last year. And we were able to get several pieces of it. I was able to get another piece. but I love it because actually I'm trying to find a piece of metal to hit it with. Hold on. There, a little bit. Yeah. Because it's titanium. And it's amazing because it weighs nothing, but you will not bend this thing. It's titanium. Anyway, this thing we're going to auctioning up later tonight or tomorrow. I'll be putting it up. But a lot of other stuff. Anyway, a lot of other really cool Ukrainian stuff. It taps well, exactly, for a busted Russian jet. But check it out at discord.aravosis.com. All right, Financial Times. This was so a couple different stories on the Wagner Group. The Wagner Group, you recall, is the mercenary group, the Soldiers for Hire out of Russia. And basically, it's a Russian organization, company put together. They train soldiers privately, and they do dirty work around the world for a lot of different governments. Actually, I think, I'm going to get to the story of what else they've been doing, what we found out today. But the first thing was the Financial Times reported today that the Wagner Group approached the Chinese to get weapons. The direct request to China from a group controlled by Putin is seen, this is according to the Financial Times, as an indication it had some confidence Beijing would be open to arming Moscow. Now, the Chinese reportedly said no, which is very interesting. This is according to a U.S. intelligence report. I did not see if this was a report leaked by that guy, but U.S. intelligence report said that Wagner, so in other words, to put this in context, the Wagner Group goes to the Chinese. They say, hey, we'd really like you to give us weapons. The assumption is that the Wagner Group, which is closely allied with a Putin ally, although he's a Putin ally that goes back and forth pro-Putin, anti-Putin a little bit, the fact that he would go to them means he was given an indication that they would say yes. So the assumption was the Chinese would say yes because the Russians knew the Chinese would say yes. China did not say yes, but this was after the U.S. called them out. And remember, the U.S. called them out. Who was that? Thank you, Leanne, for the llama on TikTok. The U.S. called them out because we had intelligence saying that China had basically said we're going to start arming Russia. So this is sort of one more piece that shows China probably did make that decision privately that it was going to aid and arm Russia, but B, whether it was the U.S. going public or something else about it, convinced China to back off, and China's not arming the Russians, or at least we hope they're not arming the Russians. But that was good news. The second Wagner story today is that according to CNN, the Wagner Group is supplying the militia that is battling the government of Sudan. Now, kind of a whole, civil war situation going on in Sudan right now. Like attacks on the government and very violent. But according to CNN, the Wagner mercenary group has been supplying Sudan's rapid support forces with missiles to aid their fight against the country's army. The sources said that surface-to-air missiles have significantly buttressed the paramilitary fighters and their leader as he battles power with the general Fatah al-Burhan, Sudan's military ruler and head of its armed forces. The G7, 7 of the top world economies, is talking about trying to do a near total trade ban with Russia or of Russia. Quick sip of tea. The problem is it's going to be very hard to pull off. So G7 would like to ratchet things up. And actually what they want to do is, rather than the current situation where we keep banning individual things, and part of the problem is, I told you guys the other day, with computer chips, that they're having a very hard time stopping Russia from getting computer chips. Now, part of the reason is each new thing that they realize has a computer chip that Russia's, for example, hair dryers. We were saying Russia could get hair dryers and use those computer chips. So many pieces of technology that you don't even think of technology have computer chips. So it's very hard to stop Russia from getting them. Well, the theory here is you ban everything from trade with Russia and you make exceptions. So rather than detailing the specific products that are banned, you detail the specific products that are not banned, right? So it makes it much easier to basically ban all the bad stuff. And then you would make exemptions for food, exemptions for medicine, things like that, right? Well, the problem here is getting the European Union to agree, because for it to pass the European Union, it's got to go to, I keep wanting to say 30 countries, but that's NATO. The EU is close. Is the EU 27? I think. How many countries, guys, is the EU? Actually, NATO's 31. Excuse me, 31. Don't mean to knock the Finns out. But is the EU 27, I think, or so? Well, anyway, the problem is trying to get all of the European Union countries, and it's got to be unanimous. Good luck. because not only do you have a situation where Hungary is going to obviously want to do bad things on behalf of Russia, because they always do, you're going to have each individual country special interests saying, we don't want our trade banned, right? I was looking at a map today. A lot of German trade happens with Russia. In terms of the top current European trade countries, doing trade with Russia, Germany was up there. Italy was up there. I'm trying to think of who were the other really big ones. Actually, Lithuania, I was surprised. Lithuania had a lot of trade. Poland too, but Lithuania had a lot. And then you get other countries. Then you get France, and you get Ireland actually had a decent chunk as well. Ireland, Roshin. But nonetheless, the concern is that once those special interests click in, and once you've got individual businesses in these countries, basically finding out, they're going to pressure their governments to say, you're not banning our trade. So let's see, it's difficult. Another thing that doesn't seem to be going anywhere fast is the artillery agreement. The European Union had agreed, 3 or 4 weeks ago now, to put up about $1 million. No, how much was it? To put up, not $1 million, to put up 1 million artillery shells for Ukraine to find. Thank you, Elle, for the Cheems dog. And the idea was they're putting up money to have these shells either to procure them or to actually have them made. In other words, find them on the market already or have them made for Ukraine. And there's been a huge fight between the French and the Greeks, and I forget who else I was reading today is fighting. Where was it? The Poles are fighting with the French, maybe, because the French are trying to make it by Europe, which I understand. But Ukraine needs this money, and they've now been playing games for 3 or 4 weeks, battling over where the money's going to be spent, because everyone either wants the money or doesn't want the money spent somewhere. So that's a bit annoying. Denmark and the Netherlands will. Oh, this was good. So this is news about the more Leopard tanks for Ukraine. Hang on a sec. Denmark and the Netherlands will jointly purchase and donate 14 Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine by early 2024. Okay, not too thrilled about that number. It is April right now, so that means January at the earliest of 2024. The announcement comes after the Danish government pledged 100 Leopard 1 tanks to Kyiv. So these are Leopard 2s, the more advanced ones. Acting Danish Defense Minister Troels Lund Poulsen said after a meeting of the Danish Foreign Affairs Council that at least 80 Leopard 1 tanks would be transferred to Ukraine by the end of 2023, followed by the Leopard 2s next year. As I have said before, this is a very good example of why it is such a problem that we have dragged our feet in terms of supplying Ukraine. We waited until January to decide about tanks. The U.S. only got dragged in to agree to send our own tanks because Germany blackmailed us, but I wasn't happy at the time. Now I'm kind of glad Germany did it. Everyone was dragging their feet almost until January. The Brits finally said, we're going to give some anyway. I'm forgetting who else. Wasn't there somebody else that stepped up along with the Brits and said, was it the Poles maybe that was going to do some, and then then the floodgates broke. Actually, the Poles needed permission from the Germans, but the Poles at least forced the issue, and the Brits said, we're going to give our own tanks anyway. Had we basically, these tanks are taking a year. They're going to get there in a year from when we decided we would let them have tanks. Okay. Had we decided a year ago that we would let Ukraine have tanks, then the year it would have taken to get the tanks would have been now. Ukraine would have had the tanks it needs now, right? For the counteroffensive that's happening now. A year? Will Ukraine even be around in a year? Will they be able to, will we still be supporting them? Will they still be fighting? This is what happens. You can't dilly-dally with this stuff because it has it's not like we said, it's not like you can say, well, let's hold off on the tanks. And then when they really need them, later on we'll decide and then they'll get them. No, later on we'll decide and then it will take a year or more to get them. And that's what's happening. So really pisses me off I have to say, it kind of ticks me off this whole thing. Oh, Laka, look at you. Thank you for the Patreon as well. Sorry about all that confusion before. So thank you. That's really sweet of you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Laka just got a Patreon subscription and a very generous Patreon subscription. Thank you for that. So that's good news. Speaking of Patreon, you can go to my Patreon. It's another way of helping me out. Just go to patreon.com/Aravosis. For you guys, it's at the bottom of the screen. For the rest of you, you can go to my TikTok, my URL and my TikTok profile, the link that says Linktree. just go there. And Patreon is a really nice way of basically helping us a creator by giving them a donation every month. $5, $10, $25, whatever. It helps me a lot because I do this for free. I mean, I know I keep harping on it, but I need support to keep doing this because this is my job. So I've done it for a year. I've been able to pull it off, but in order to keep pulling it off, I need your guys' continued support because quite literally you are helping me pay my bills. Nobody else is paying me to do this. You guys are paying me to do this, and I am not independently wealthy. So please do help, and I appreciate that. You can go to patreon.com/Aravosis. As I always say, if you've been watching for a few months and you like my work and you can afford it, do not help if you can't afford it. I'll survive. But if you can afford it and you can chip in, I would appreciate it. Flower Lady, speaking of which, always the generous Flower Lady with the beautiful flower gifts. Thank you for that on TikTok. Bash Brannigan saying, I think Canada has already sent leopards. Canada already sent several. Yeah, they arrived a few weeks ago, I think. I think so. I'm pretty sure. Thank you, Elle, for the paper crane. Yeah, I think Canada's, well, there's a number of countries now that have already sent some, which is good. So, I mean, countries are trying, but it's just things are getting very slowed down. The Germans, I think, had to switch from Leopard 2s to Leopard 1s because they weren't available. The American Abrams might arrive by October, some of them. It's just a very slow process, and this is why you got to decide things early, Any case. All right. So, so that's my Patreon, patreon.com/Aravosis. And if you subscribe $5 or more to the Patreon, it makes you a VIP member of the Discord. And that means you can join me for the weekend chats we have, like we're going to have this weekend at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time, US. Thank you, Allie, for the superpower gift. And it makes you a $5 and up, makes you a VIP member of the Discord, which gives you other privileges, including joining our VIP auction. I have 2 auctions running simultaneously, one only for VIP members, one for everybody else. And I typically put the newest, like the new cool stuff I get goes to the VIP auction before it goes for everybody else's. So you do get some benefits there too. Thank you, Canausi, for the swing, and Lisa for the butterflies. Let me go on. A few more stories. It's not too busy of a news day. Oh, hang on. Yeah, let me see. I think that's I got 2 more stories here. 2 more stories. This was interesting, actually. So several Ukrainian soldiers are being charged with treason. I mean, it's an interesting story because I almost feel sorry for them a little bit. Okay. I almost feel kind of sorry. Because listen to this. At first you hear treason, you go, oh my God, what did they do? Basically, they got tricked. They were freelancing. You know how the Ukrainians are, how the Ukrainians have set up a hotline, like I Want to Live, I think it's called, hotline for the Russian troops to call them and say, look, I want to defect. I want to leave. How do I do it? Right? Thank you, Deb. Sorry, real quick for the whale. Do a wave for Deb on TikTok there. Thank you, Deb. I appreciate that. And so the Ukrainians have set up a hotline for the Russian troops to defect. And these Ukrainian troops decided to, I guess, freelance on their own to try to get some Russians to defect. I don't know how. They start communicating with this Russian who they think is going to defect. I don't know. It's a pilot, a Russian pilot that's going to defect. And what happens, he's actually like a double agent, and he's tricking them into giving him information about their airbase and everything else. And the Russians went ahead and bombed the airbase and killed a lot of people. Thank you, Danke Shane, for the coral. Listen to this. They revealed details about the location of the Ukrainian Air Force personnel and aircraft. Who is that? Shane for the coral, and Kath for the coral as well. Thank you for that. It revealed the location of the Ukrainian Air Force personnel and aircraft that made it possible for Russia to launch a successful missile strike on the Kanatova airfield in central Ukraine. A Ukrainian commander was killed. 17 personnel were wounded. 2 fighter jets were destroyed, and the airstrip buildings and equipment suffered lasting damage. Very sad. I mean, I almost feel bad for these guys because basically they were freelancing and they thought they had caught a Russian pilot who wanted to go, and they gave him all this information that ended up being used against them. I mean, again, I feel a little bad because it doesn't feel like treason. It's unless there's something more going on here, Let me read you the more from this. The SBU, Ukrainian security, said the servicemen had attempted without coordination with the relevant state authorities to seize a Russian plane last July after its pilot said he wanted to defect. doesn't feel like treason to me. Feels like negligent F up, right? But doesn't quite feel like treason. I don't know. I'm feeling kind of bad for the, it's stupid, but it's very sincere stupidity, you know? Thank you, user 822 for the hat. You're always very generous. I appreciate that. You know what I mean? It feels like they were earnestly stupid. They were trying to help out. I don't know. I mean, again, they really screwed up. Maybe you're court-martialed. I'm not convinced it's treason. Okay. In any case, Bash Brannigan is saying, is he? Oh, we're doing map in Irish again. So here we go. Here's the map. We aren't showing the map much today, although there isn't much map to show today. I'm going to talk about the Bolshoi ballet next. I could say the Bolshoi way up here in Moscow, way out of the screen. Thank you for that, Roshin. Bash Brannigan asks a super chat question. Is it good or bad if Russia breaks up because of the war? Okay, probably very complicated question. Some of my initial thoughts, this would be like a good, had you asked me that earlier, I would have asked it to the students at Georgetown when I was doing the oral exams for the graduate students there for the program I graduated from, because that's a good question. And it's a good question to kind of see how somebody thinks. But the bad potentially is a country with nuclear weapons breaking apart that is such a large country. Russia has 11 time zones. Think about that. The mainland US has 4 time zones in the mainland US. Then you got Alaska and Hawaii adds 2 more. But 11 time zones, consecutively is huge, right? It's a huge country, so it's going to affect a lot of countries on its border potentially. It has nukes, so that's something you worry about with the country breaking up, because the country starts breaking up. Could it be a civil war? I mean, it's kind of miraculous that the Soviet Union dissolved so peacefully, right, or peaceably. So that's a big concern. Now, Russia is a very dangerous place. It is always a dictatorship or a wannabe dictatorship. They're bullies. They're obviously prone to genocide. They occupied Europe for half a century and enslaved its people. Say what you will about the US. I mean, we weren't doing nearly that bad of stuff by the 1990s, by the 1990 that the Russians were. We've done bad stuff, but we didn't enslave half of Europe, half a continent. Recently, mind you, so Russia getting weakened by falling apart certainly appeals to me. Various ethnic groups from Russia getting their freedom appeals to me. But I will tell you the same thing that I always say when you're worrying about when you're talking about assassination, and people say, why don't we just take Putin out or whatever, right? And sorry, thank you. Oh, I got multiples here. Sorry, Lee's for the hat and mustache, and who was that? SB for the map in Chinese, Chinese or Japanese? Is that? I don't know which one that is. Is it Chinese? I don't know. Let us know, SB. I think I was going to say Japanese at first. Now I'm getting confused. Although I know there's some borrowed. Who is it that borrows some of the symbols from the other? Is it Japan? I always forget. In any case, so what you have to worry about in terms of taking out a foreign leader, okay? Thank you, Al, for the hat and mustache. Putting all the legalities and going to war and everything else aside, you've got to worry about what comes next. So if you're going to take out a foreign leader, assassinate him in essence, you have to say, who's coming next? It's not just a good idea to get rid of Saddam Hussein, right? Sure, he's a bad man. Gaddafi in Libya, both of them deserve to die, basically, and get removed from office. But who comes next? Are they strong men that are holding the country together, and all of a sudden they leave and the country falls apart? And that's the thing I would advise about with regards to whether Chinese characters are used in Japanese. Maybe that's it. I knew there was a crossover from one to the other. Thank you, Mark. You've got to worry about Russia falling apart as far as what comes next, right? Will it be a massive civil war? Will the nukes play a role? Will it somehow cause turmoil with surrounding regions of Georgia, all the former Soviet republics, all 15 of them, right? So I don't know. I will say, my gut says nothing would make me happier, but my, smarter analytical brain says you want to be careful, Bolshoi. So the last story is the Bolshoi ballet, super famous, right? Russian ballet company. I mean, one of probably the most famous ballet company in the world, I'd say, actually, would be my guess. Thank you, Bonnie, for the pearl there. My guess is if you interviewed people or you did a poll, Bolshoi might be the one people know the most, right? the Bolshoi ballet pulled a ballet they were doing in Russia dedicated to Rudolf Nureyev over Putin's anti-gay law. So Putin has this law passed actually several years ago, and then he tightened it up. That's an anti-gay and trans law. You can't promote, being gay or promote transgender or say somehow say that it's okay, right? Well, the ballet was dedicated to Rudolf Nureyev, who was gay. He died, I'm pretty sure, right? Nureyev died of AIDS or complications associated with AIDS, I'm pretty sure. And I mean, Nureyev, possibly the most famous male Russian ballet star, I'm going to go with. We've got lots of things here. Kath with the coral, user A22 with the April thingy, Dankeschön with the coral. Thank you guys. Nureyev, is he the most possible, the most famous ballet dancer in the world? At least for men. Even for women, though, I wonder. I think he might be. And Baryshnikov, maybe, right? For the top two. Thank you, Cynthia, for the coral as well. Well, he was gay. And the ballet touches upon him being gay. Somehow, some part of it references the fact that he's gay. They pulled the entire ballet because they were afraid, right? Baryshnikov would be the other one. They were afraid it would get them arrested if they ran the ballet because it mentions him being gay. And if they don't present it in a way that's negative, the government could say, you were making it sound positive. You were making it sound normal that he was gay. And then you go to jail. So kind of really sad and screwed up. But, again, dealing with a dictatorship. So what do you do? All right, guys, let's do our Q&A. So the rest of the show, what we do is I take your guys' question. Obviously, feel free to do more super chats. Laka's is still hanging up there. Thank you, Laka. I appreciate that. Anthony for the super sticker. Thank you. If you meant to do a question, feel free to throw it in, but I think you meant it as a super sticker. Thank you. And on TikTok, obviously you can submit questions via the Q&A link in my profile. I also try to pick stuff up off the screen, but it is probably easier. Thank you, Dee, for the mini speakers. It is easier to pull them up in the list because that way, if it's on the screen, sometimes they flow by on TikTok. But let me pull this up here. D with balloons as well. Thank you, D. Being very generous today. TikTok. Hang on here. Oops, sorry. Q&A on TikTok. I did not see this. There was a huge protest against Muslims in Russia, from Mordu says. I didn't see that. So I don't really know what to say about it because I'm trying to think. I don't think I'm familiar with that. No, I didn't hear about it. So I guess my guess is probably not for good reasons would be my guess, right? But I'd have to know the details to give any more on that as to what the implications are. I just don't know. Have you heard anything about USA having troops in Ukraine already? What came up with that NBC is and this frankly wasn't really much of a secret, but the classified documents that guy leaked, over the last couple months included mention that special forces, a small number, we're talking somewhere between 10 and 50, American special forces, British, and French, and I forget the other ones, have been operating in Ukraine. The assumption is that because there's no way, I'll tell you in a minute why I say there's no way they were fighting. The assumption is they're training or they're somehow doing a liaison or some other kind of work, but they're not actually fighting the Russians. Why do I think that? Because if Joe Biden has been so terrified of giving Ukraine weapons that he will not give them missiles that can go 200 miles. The Ukrainians need it, and Biden's still saying no. If Biden won't give them missiles that can just go 200 miles, 300 kilometers, which isn't a big deal because he doesn't want to upset Vladimir Putin and there'd be nuclear war, do you really think that guy is going to put U.S. troops on the ground secretly fighting Russia? Not going to happen. Because if an American soldier were caught literally working for the U.S. undercover and fighting Russia, it would be, literally, shooting Russian troops, it would be war. So that's what the story is. That's what you probably heard about because it came out in the last, maybe a week or so ago. But yeah, I wish Joe Biden were so war hungry that he were willing to put U.S. troops on the ground. I don't want him to put U.S. troops on the ground, to be honest, fighting. But my point is, I wish he had the kind of personality and mindset about Ukraine that he would be that forward, sort of, let's take the battle to the Russians. That ain't him. So, Milos, did you see the video of Russian soldier who was back from the war, now is disabled, and social service took his 3 kids? So Russia now kidnapped his kids. I did not see that. No. Wow. No. I don't know about that. I mean, horrible. I'm not surprised. There's videos on TikTok. Okay. I'm not surprised. I mean, again, the Russians are not really known for taking, I mean, we have issues taking care of our troops too, as far as once they get back home, like the veterans. There have always been issues with veterans' health care. We've got a lot of U.S. veterans who can't afford to eat. I mean, they're on like food stamps and things, welfare. So we need to do better as well. But at least, like when they're in the military, we don't leave them to die. The Russians just leave them, or the Russian troops get killed. They don't even go and get the troops. Like for us, you go back and you get the bodies. I mean, it's part of the sort of commitment to your fellow brothers and sisters. The Russians don't do any of that. So I'm not surprised in a way, I guess. Exactly, Naja. Well, no, it's either that or brain dead, senile, whatever, right? He's one or the other. We don't know. Well, let's talk about this, Thomas. Thomas is being trolly, but that's okay. Why don't you put a ticker that shows how many Ukrainians die every day for our proxy war? Well, here we go, Thomas. Let's ask folks here. I know we've got Ukrainians. How many Ukrainians here watching the show are upset that their country is defending itself? That they would be happier if the US and Europe stopped giving them weapons and support, and to stop the door. In other words, they wish this war would stop right now, and the only reason they're fighting is because America's giving them weapons. They'd much rather, because too many of their citizens are dying, they'd rather just give up their country, right? I mean, weigh in. The problem with your comment, Thomas, and we had somebody online that got into this in our Discord the other day, is that no Ukrainians ever say that. It's always either an American or somebody, frankly, paid off by the Russians, usually, somebody who's in cahoots with the Russians, who says, all these Ukrainians are dying for our war. And they can't find a single Ukrainian who says that, right? As if the Ukrainians are only fighting because we're making them, not fighting for their country, not fighting to get the 18% of their country back that Russia stole, right? Russia is currently occupying and declared part of Russia now, all this in Ukraine. All this, Russia says, is now Russian, and they're trying to get the rest of it. The Ukrainians are beating the Russians with our help and trying to get their country back and trying to save theirs and trying to stop their citizens from being killed in a genocide. And you can't find a single Ukrainian who thinks the only reason. Also, I would say, too, it's also incredibly condescending to the Ukrainians and very disrespectful to suggest that they're so dumb, right, and so manipulated that they don't even understand that they're not fighting for their country, right? They're fighting because America's making them fight. Yeah, as I said, there are no Ukrainians that you will find that will agree with what you're saying. I mean, it really isn't. I mean, that's the thing. And actually, if you think about it, I mean, I'd love to. I don't want to talk to you in person, but it'd be interesting to talk to you in person. Thankfully, Happy Beach, because you also can't really explain your argument. Like, what does that really mean? How does it work? I mean, do we put a gun to the Ukrainians' heads and say, you better fight for America? No. I mean, so why are they fighting? Anyway, but I've seen it. We saw it on the Discord the other day, too. Somebody said that, all the Ukrainians dying for you. As if, like, we're making the Ukrainians, and we're the only reason the Ukrainians are dying. Ukraine, by the way, wouldn't have a country if we cut them off. I mean, they still might surprise us. But if we cut Ukraine off, there's a very good chance, had we not helped Ukraine, and I mean we, the collective we, the world, Ukraine probably would have run out of weapons, and they would no longer have a country today. And a lot of people would be dead, because the Russians had hit lists, by the way, too. The Russians had assassination lists coming in of cultural figures, political figures, activists. They had lists of activists from the Maidan Revolution, years ago, that they were going to kill. They were going to kill all these top levels of, either put them in jail or kill them to try to eradicate the Ukrainian culture. So anyway, I would hope you would fight like that if someone invades your country. I don't think you would, but I wish you would. Dan Metcalf, do you think there's a possibility that Ukraine could be a protectorate of NATO, not necessarily a full member to NATO, to screw over Putin? Well, the problem is how you do that, okay? Ukraine, the point Dan is sort of getting at is the point Dan is getting at is, how do you, after the war is over and I've talked about this the other day, how do you reach a peace agreement? How do you guarantee that the Russians aren't just going to invade again in a couple of years when they get their military back, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, or whatever, right? They're just going to invade and take more. Ukraine needs to have guarantees of their protection. The problem is no guarantee short of NATO, of a membership in NATO, is enough to protect Ukraine. Because short of being a NATO member, what are we going to sign a document saying, okay, look at us. Poland might do it. Poland might go to war for Ukraine. The Baltic states might go to war for Ukraine. The rest of us, forget it. The Americans certainly won't. The Germans and the French won't. The Brits, I'm not sure. Thank you, Bonnie, for the feathers there. Right? But we're not willing to go to war for Ukraine now. So I wouldn't trust Ukraine. I wouldn't trust, if I were Ukraine, that we're going to be willing to go for war next time. Now, what you would need is they'd either need to be a part of NATO, or what I've talked about is having NATO peacekeepers in Ukraine, so that basically they're a tripwire, so that NATO troops get killed if the Russians invade, and at least those individual NATO countries, the Americans, the Germans, the French, whoever's willing to do it, frankly, Americans are the ones you need the most, that those troops will immediately, and I would say, get the Canadians, you get basically the Brits, you get the big powers and the surrounding powers, right? And so that immediately, well, Finns and everybody else now too, immediately they've declared war on everybody by invading Ukraine. That would work. But again, with the current climate in the US, the MAGA crowd isn't going to like that. Trump's crowd isn't. Republicans overall, some Republicans would get it. The good Republicans, I think, would understand it. The bad ones certainly wouldn't. And Trump is still causing trouble. As long as Trump's around, we've got the impact of Trumpism, sadly. Oh, this is going to be a good call. Gee, I wonder who that's calling. Probably a really, really good friendly call. That's funny. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to take that. I don't think I'm going to take that one. Woo. My service provider gave me a little thing that popped up that said probable spam. You think? Oh my. Actually, that would be fun to answer it. Hello? Hello? Actually, that would have been funny. You're right. I should have done that just for fun. I should have gone, hello, Washington, D.C. speaking. Oh God. No, you guys have to follow me on Twitter. I have fun on Twitter. I had more trolls today I find like Chinese trolls on social media who are trying to scam me, and I get into a long discussion with them. And I had some trolls hit me up today, and both of them were using the same script separately. And they always ask your job. And I told one of them I said I was a Catholic priest to one of them. And I told the other one, I was like, I'm a nematologist. And I was thinking nematologists, I think, are people that deal with worms and stuff. So I Googled it. It said worms. I was like, he didn't understand. He was like, oh, that sounds very interesting. I was, it is. I said, it's very dirty and slimy, but it's very fun. He got very upset. Anyway, it's a long story. Go to my Twitter and you'll see I posted the entire conversation of me with the Chinese trolls. It's very funny with the Chinese scammers. But it's Twitter. It's my Twitter account is the same as my TikTok. It's Aravosis. So at Aravosis is my Twitter account. I've got the whole conversation up with these guys. It's fabulous. It really was. This guy, I forgot all the stuff I was telling him. I started quoting Star Trek at him. Things that he had no idea. And it was like, oh, really? Yeah. I talked to him about Gach. Sorry, I'm getting too geeky for some of you who don't know Star Trek, because I told him I was into earthworms. So I started talking to him about Gach and the best way to serve Gach, which any Trekkie knows is live, of course. Went over his head entirely. It was the best thing. Worms. Oh my God. Anyway, what else we got? All right. More, it really is. I'm very proud of today's conversation with the trolls. As I said, you'll find it on my Twitter. All right. Let me pull up more questions from you guys. Remember, on TikTok, you can submit them in the Q&A. The rest of you, I know Twitter, Mike. Yeah, Elon took away all the check marks today. So anybody with a check mark left on Twitter is paying for it, just so you know. So thank you for that, Dan, for the question. Interesting. A Proco, I remember you. A pro-Ukrainian TikToker left of center said Ukrainian officials have announced the start of the counteroffensive. Any truth? Well, here's the thing. Okay. Yesterday, the Ukrainian government said basically they said yesterday, well, the counteroffensive has already begun in many ways, in many small ways. And, I think I mentioned this to you guys briefly yesterday. I take that with a grain of salt. First of all, because no Ukrainian official is going to really tell us what's going on. Like, unless there's a massive bombing campaign, and then we know the Ukrainian offensive started anyway, they're not going to tell us. So I heard that from the Ukrainian official. And I went, okay, whatever. You're playing games with the Russians. So my guess is that might be what that TikToker is talking about, is that the Ukrainian government did say, well, yes, the offensive already started. We're doing lots of little things all over that you don't even know about to, soften up the ground, shape the, what do you call it? Shaping, shape the ground to make it easier for us to fight. Maybe I'm sure they are already anyway, but it's not, from what we know, it's not like there's been a massive counter invasion or something to push the Russians out yet. So just so you know, but I'll bet you that's what they're talking about. Yes, we talked about this at the beginning of the show. One second. Oh, Noah. If I were president, Russia would cease to exist as a country. Special forces would be in there conducting operations. Also, thank you for your work. Thank you. I appreciate it, Noah. Yeah. As I've said, I am not sympathetic to Russia in any way because of their horrific record on everything. But war is risky. Direct war is risky with a nuclear power. Because if we start to win and we start to take the country, or we take their leaders out, they fire back. So So I hear you. Trust me. So this was the right regarding what we were talking about earlier. Evening, John. This was from who? Oh, Scott Glass. Have you heard about the Russian bombing of Belgorod today? Sounds like a mislaunch by a fighter plane. Yes. As I was saying at the top of the show, the Russians bombed their own city of Belgorod. Okay, time for a map. Bombed their own city of Belgorod, which is right across the border here from Kharkiv, Ukraine. Belgorod's right here, maybe 20 miles, maybe 30 kilometers across the border. It's very close. And the Russians, an Su-34 bomber, was going to bomb Ukraine, screwed up, and they bombed their own city. The Ukrainians should thank God every day, that they're being attacked by somebody as incompetent as the Russians. Obviously, they shouldn't, It's horrible, but it's at least very beneficial that the Russians are this bad at this. They're so cutthroat that they're willing to kill civilians anyway, but they're very bad at it, thank God. Don't know. I don't know what the situation is with the water. That's a very good question. So somebody was asking, actually, do any of the Ukrainians know? Nancy Sis2 is saying, can't the Ukrainians just turn the water off in Crimea? They rely on Ukrainian water. They do. The Ukrainians had shut it off years ago. When Russia invaded last year, they turned the water back on again. And I don't know whether the Ukrainians have gotten enough of because pretty much the Ukrainians pushed the Russians south of the Dnipro. I don't think the Russians are north of the Dnipro at all, the main river cutting through Ukraine. What I don't know is there some portion where they're getting the water? Like, is there a plant or something on the south side, for example, which probably would make sense? Like the water intake would be from the south side because it's going south anyway. So if the Russians are in control of that, the water's still going there to Crimea. But that's my guess. But we've not, I would wager 99% that they've not shut the water off, or we would have heard about it. It would have been a big deal that they shut it off again. So that's got to be why. Will the UK send any fighters to Ukraine? I don't know. I don't know about what the UK is saying. I know when they got asked about it, like maybe a month or two ago, they kind of brushed it off. My guess is the UK would be more amenable to doing it than Washington would, than Biden would. My guess would also be that the Biden administration probably told the Brits, because at one point, remember, the Brits were kind of talking about planes. And I think Biden probably told them, please shut up. Please stop talking about it because you're going to make us look bad and you're going to put pressure on us. And the Brits, being good allies, probably did. So that's my guess. Oh, interesting. Andy says the water is off and isn't normally turned on till the summer. But the question is, who's in charge of turning it on? Is it on, are the Russians on the south side of the river in charge, or are the Ukrainians on the north side? Or is it something traversing the river? What is it, right? Oh, what else we got? I'm going to yawn at you guys. UK has been actively training Ukrainian fighters. Oh, the fighter jets. Yeah, I'd heard about that. I mean, well, the Brits at least are smart enough to basically say, let's start training them now, right? Let's start training the fighters now, so at least they're ready to go. More questions here. Please do keep the gifts coming on TikTok as well. Who was that? Oh, L. Thank you, L, for the hearts there. Hello in Germany, Ilus. Let me pull up more questions here too. Well, it's a curtain. It's actually I forget what you call the material, the nice material you put on yourself when you're watching TV. It's got a funny name. I forget. Super comfortable. But I just hang it up on some hooks because the sun comes in and it bothers me, but it's too much of a pain to actually close the curtains all the way. So it's my temporary pretty thing on the, no, it's a kind of fabric, kind of expensive, but not really, that you use. I don't remember what it's called. It's got a name. I don't know. One of those chenille or whatever. That's it. Chenille. That's it. Yep. That was it. I was going to say it's a girly name. It's a girly name fabric that's super comfortable. And and it's actually kind of warm. Like you're watching TV, you kind of throw it over yourself. It feels really nice. Velour. No, it's not velour, but thank you. Discord. Yeah, I think we'll do a Discord tonight because this is going to wrap up on time. The BBC's hardly speak about Ukraine. Oh, that's too bad. Let's see what else we got here. We still don't know what happened. So the latest on that explosion over Kyiv last night in Ukraine, initially we thought it was a NASA satellite, and then later NASA came out, I think I told you guys, and said, it's not our satellite. So the latest thinking was maybe a meteorite or something like that, Polish Thunder, why isn't NATO providing more weapons to end the war? Planes should be deployed ASAP. I agree with you. The problem is, look, Biden, and I guarantee you France and Germany as well, Macron and Scholz, is worried about angering Putin. I think they're wrong. But Biden thinks that if we give too many weapons or the wrong weapons, it'll cross a red line, and then Russia could use nuclear weapons, or who knows what they would do. And I think that's utter BS. And I think the only way Putin will use nuclear weapons or some other weapon of mass destruction, biological or chemical, in Ukraine is if we set the conditions that he thinks makes it okay to do that. And what I mean is, if we have not made it Putin's not going to not use them, to use a double negative, because I'm not going to keep using double negatives here. The reason Putin doesn't use nukes isn't going to be, well, the Americans didn't cross the line by giving the Ukrainians those long-range attack missiles, so I guess I won't use nukes. The reason Putin isn't using nukes is he knows we're going to go ballistic on him if he does, right? He's going to use nukes or not based on, well, A, does it help him militarily? But B, what is America and the world going to do? The Chinese are going to cut him off. The Indians are going to cut him off. We'll go to war if he uses nukes, in principle. That's what's going to stop him from using nukes. Unless, thank you, Brad, for the air dancer, unless Putin thinks, hey, I don't really think America has got the balls for this. I don't think they've got the backbone. If I use nukes, I think America is going to back down. And that's what worries me with all of this. We should have told him, we're going to give what other weapons we damn well please to Ukraine, and enough of your threats. You make enough threats. Literally, I would have told them, I'm sick of your threats. You make nuclear threats. Well, guess who else has nukes? We do. We can destroy you. You can destroy us. Nobody's using nukes. As for conventional forces, our conventional forces in NATO overpower the Russians, 10-1, whatever the number is. We would destroy you. And between us, we're not even saying this publicly, between us, we would destroy you. So enough of the threats, enough of the BS. We're going to give whatever weapons we want. You do whatever you want, and let's see how it goes. But if you use nukes or anything else, we're taking you out, and you better know it. But that's what you say. And again, and the problem, this is not easy stuff. I'm not trying to make it sound easy, but you are dealing with a dictator, and you're dealing with somebody who only understands, macho manly bullshit. And you've got to give it back to him and tell him this. And again, the red line, Obama gave him a red line and the line was crossed and he didn't do anything. That's not how you deal with somebody like Russia. So no, you don't want war, but you tell them, I'm prepared for war if that's what you do, but it's going to be your choice. I'm going to arm Ukraine. I'm not going to attack you, but if you decide to go crazy over it, that's your choice. And if you do, we're going to win. So but literally all the nuclear threats too. I would have just gotten on the phone and gone, who do you think you're fooling? Right? You're going to use your nukes against who? Like, you're not going to use them against us. And if you use them in Ukraine, we will consider that an attack on NATO and we're going in. End of story. Bye, Vlad. Boom. No, it really pisses. But again, it's not just that. I think because we've played into the whole, we're afraid of him using his nukes and we don't want to send too many weapons and we don't want to send the wrong weapon because the wrong weapon Putin would perceive as escalating. And if we escalate, he might use his nukes. If you're Putin, you're going, this is beautiful. He's totally freaked out about me. He's totally freaked about how angry I get, how crazy I get, right? So you keep going angrier and crazier to try to freak the US back. But we've told Putin that we're being careful what we do in Ukraine because we don't want to make him mad. Well, you've just empowered him. It's just whatever. Like I said, it upsets me. But again, you know nothing, John Stark. Jon Snow. Oh, I ruined the line. I said John Stark. No, I had a troll that wrote, you know nothing. With his foreign accent too. I love that. You know nothing. They don't even realize it's a foreign accent when they write it. You know nothing. But you know nothing, Jon Snow, who I think is his actual wife in real life. They got married. At least they were dating, but I'm pretty sure they got married. They met on the set of whatchamacallit, Dragon movie. Dragon TV show, HBO. What else we got? All right, another question or two, guys, and then we're going to call it quits because we're slowing down. They did get married. That's what I thought. Yeah. You know nothing, Jon Snow. I love that line. That was such a great line. Game of Thrones. Thank you. I know I was like spacing out here. Well, the thing is, I mean, Illusion's saying they've already made him mad with the weapons they gave and it's been escalated. The thing is, to some degree, yeah. And what's happened? Nothing, right? What has Russia done? We've had a year of threats from Russia. What's actually happened as a result? Nothing. We keep giving better and better weapons. Nothing happens. The Russians haven't. I mean, there's nothing they can do, and there's nothing they have done. Ugh. Did I go Welsh? Sorry. Well, what's her accent? Is her accent Welsh or what is hers? Or on the show, what is her accent? You know nothing, Jon Snow, or whatever it is, the way she says it. I love the way that accent, whatever it is fabulous. John Targaryen. I'm actually forgetting all of that now. I'm even forgetting what that whole thing was. Like that's right. I'm forgetting now, right? He was tied back. Yeah. Yorkshire? Oh, that's interesting. Okay. The Wilding. Yeah. But is it Yorkshire? Could have been Scottish. Oh, to me, it sounds like it could have been Scottish. Who knows? Anthony, with all the losses of Russian equipment and men, hang on, would it not make sense to invade Russia now and help Ukraine have some peace? The problem is, you're invading a nuclear power. If we start winning, they use their nukes against us. Like if we start taking Moscow or whatever, it's too risky. If they didn't have nukes, it's still very risky. But the fact that they've got nukes, you just can't risk it, unfortunately, Oh, interesting. I see. Iluz is saying, I'm a tanker in the 1st Panzer Division, and we ran drills for weeks and trained some of them. And if he isn't going to do anything now, he never will. Well, that's my thought on it. Right. He's talking about Putin. He's had so many threats over the last year. And now mind you, okay, I will say to Biden's credit or whatever, Biden's argument probably will be that that by going slowly in giving the weapons to Ukraine, right? Doing it so slowly, incrementally, taking months to get the HIMARS and then 1 HIMARS and then a second. And the next month we gave them 2 more, right? Very slow. It was the frog boiling in the pot, that it went so slowly that the Russians weren't able to get upset about any small little increment. But overall, we've now given them tons of weapons, right? So Biden would say, I intentionally did it slowly. So we kept, now we're at the point we're giving them tanks and the Russians still didn't freak out, because had we done tanks right away, maybe the Russians would have freaked out. It's not a ridiculous argument. I still think this has gone on too long. I mean, now that's when I would bring up the troll argument and say the Ukrainians are dying. While you've been dragging this out for a year and a half, Ukrainians are dying. They've lost 20% of their country, and it's not clear how much longer this can go on for, right? So I get it, but and we already know in our countries you're going to have an issue with regards to how long the support can go, or we're afraid of how long our country will support, or the people or whatever will support continuing aid to Ukraine. So there's a big downside to dragging this out slowly. All right, guys, I'm going to do a quick recap, and I think we'll call it quits for tonight. And then I'll go to the Discord. We can go to the Discord and hang out. We shall. Oh, thank you, Stuart. British and lived in Ukraine 29 years. Wow. That's really long. Wow. Good for you. Yes. I don't think I've even got the 500 up on Patreon anymore. I'm not sure I do. I may. I don't think I do anymore. All right, let me go really quick here. So it is day 420, April 20th, 420. Day 420 of Vladimir Putin's 10-day special military operation. Scroll down here. An explosion. Oh, this is pretty good. As I said, an explosion. The Russians appear to have bombed their own city of Belgorod today, right across the border from Ukraine. A Russian bomber bombed the city. Kind of a mistake. Oops. A lawyer for Russian opposition activist Vladimir Kara-Murza, who was jailed, the activist was jailed for 25 years, said he had to flee Russia. It was made clear to him that the government was coming after him next. So he has fled Russia. Stoltenberg, who is the Secretary General of NATO, arrived in Kyiv today and made some very good comments about Ukraine joining NATO. The only thing is he's always been ahead of everybody else, of the actual NATO members themselves. So it's good he said it, but he's always been kind of ahead of the curve, so to speak, on where everybody else is. Financial Times says U.S. intelligence reports suggest China refused the Wagner mercenary group that came to it asking for weapons, which is good. Wagner is also, according to CNN, supplying the militia battling Sudan's army. The G7 group of countries is discussing a near total trade ban on Russia. The problem is it would require the European Union to sign off, and that has to be unanimous, and good luck. That's going to be tough. Denmark and the Netherlands will jointly purchase and donate 14 Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine by early 2024. Several Ukrainian service members have been accused of treason for giving away information during an unauthorized mission that enabled Russia to attack a military airfield and kill a Ukrainian commander and injure 17 troops, and destroy fighter jets and lots of other things at the airport. And finally, the Bolshoi Ballet in Moscow has pulled a ballet dedicated to famous dancer Rudolf Nureyev over Putin's anti-gay law, because the law says you can't promote being gay and make it sound normal. And in the sort of ballet documentary about his life, it mentions that he's gay. And I guess because it doesn't say bad Nureyev, that's considered a positive, and positive is illegal. And now, as we've seen too, they just threw this other opposition guy into jail for 25 years for simply saying that he opposed the war. 25 years in prison. So Russia's a full-on dictatorship. That we know that. Any case, thank you guys. Thank you, Crap. Do we make 100,000 taps? Thank you guys. I will go over to Discord and we'll hang out a little bit right now. Oop, my nose is itching. We'll go hang out on the Discord, discord.aravosis.com. And otherwise, tomorrow night, I'm back at 6 p.m. Eastern, and Saturday morning, we will do 10:30 a.m. Eastern time Saturday morning, a little bit later, where I will do my hangout on TikTok for the paid subscribers on TikTok, for the Discord Patreon subscribers of you guys over there. Thank you. Oh, Stuart, there you are. Stuart of 29 years in Ukraine. I knew I recognized your name. I've seen you before. Thanks, Stuart. Otherwise, I'll see the rest of you tonight. Right now, we go to the Discord. We hang out. It's nice. We don't really talk. We can talk politics. We don't necessarily, but All right, guys. I'll see you over there. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for the gifts. Thank you, mods. All right. Bye, Kanowski. Try again, Deb. I don't know what to tell you. No, I will tell you one final thing with Discord. Syndicate has mentioned, if I'm trying to think whether the app makes it easier, maybe. Like if you're just using the web, use the app. If you're using your phone, maybe try actually on the phone, definitely use the app, he said. That's the first thing. On the computer, I think it's the same thing. Use the app for your computer you download. Don't just use the website. That might make it easier to log in and stuff. That was his suggestion overall. Yeah, try it. Try it with the app. I think Discord is difficult until it works, and then it works. All right. I'll see you guys. Oop, I'm about to touch my laptop screen. That was funny. Someday we'll make that possible. All right, guys.